All right, so here we are, Evidence to Inform and Act, Chapter 6, and this is my part, one of the less entertaining in terms of what is to come, meaning Awesome Trish and Eric. But yeah, I am going to record this little video and attempt to bypass my inadequate feelings in regards to me and my ability to instruct some of you guys. A lot of you you're just amazing teachers, and so let's go ahead and dive into the chapter and get to it. But first, everyone, go ahead and take a moment to breathe. But let's do that while looking out the window at the trees on the field. Yeah, you can go ahead and stand up. That's right. Move towards the windows. Take a look outside. I guess you don't need to go to the windows if you can actually see. But yeah, just look at the majesty. Look at the wonder. I need everyone to know, though, that I don't trust any of those trees. Look at them. Why? You might be asking yourself. Well, because they look a little shady. Yeah, everybody can sit back down. So that brings us back to the beginning. The chapter that we have is chapter 6 in your book. Go ahead and flip to it if you want to follow along. I'm largely going to follow that, but I'm going to also talk about some experiences that I've had. And I'm going to start by telling you about a guy that I heard a story from. He had a physics professor, and he let him take the quiz as many times as it took to pass. And when I heard that, it blew my mind. I've taken physics classes, and most of the time they let you have notes and everything. And yeah, it's still not the easiest. There's a lot that you kind of have to work through. And most of you have taken that in your general classes, but yeah, it's kind of dreadful and terrifying. And when I heard about that, it kind of made me sit back and say, yeah, well, why did he do that? And when I heard the explanation, it was because it was solely based on, it was not an evaluation based on the person's ability to listen and remember, but rather to make sure that the target was hit and that, it was properly benchmarked. So I have tried to make sure that policy is in all of my classes, and I do believe it's helped a lot of different ways. So let's kind of go through this chapter and see where that logic kind of fits in. So the first slide that we see right here is this meme, right? Did I win, right? The horse is completely blinded, and furthermore, he's blinded by all the awards that he's won. So the question we need to ask, are we evaluating people rather than focusing on collective learning and improvement, right? This is something that I've had to focus on quite a bit over my first and, my second year. I've actually talked more to my kids in kind of defining what I focus on. Do I focus on the tests and quizzes? Not in a traditional way. I have actually defined myself as being more of an assessor, right? I am the manager of their learning, right? And it is their responsibility to make sure that they are able to hit those targets, but it is my job to make sure that they understand those targets and are able to do that to be successful. Otherwise, we'll be blind and ribbonless. So, the next slide. Have any of us had tests like this? Well, we can see in the picture that on one side, it's very clear that the perspective has 4 bars across the picture. But when you step on the other side, it's very clear that it looks like 3. Now, while this is optical illusion, blah, 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 this is a lot of how my first year felt in terms of how I was assessing the students, right? I had a lot of fun. It was very personalized, but at the same time, I was not as focused as I felt I could be. And so How did I correct that? Let's jump to my second year. Well, as you can see, it is very much focused where the information is coming from, but it's a bit too much, right? So there is information overload, and in this case, it's very clear where the source is coming from, but it might still not be the most effective route. So let's bypass that embarrassment, and as I continue to improve, I'll let you guys know how I'm doing. But one of the first things the chapter talks about is how we actually need to kind of refrain from the idea of tests and remember more of an assessment, right? Where we're honestly seeing and trying to measure the amount of learning that has taken place. So we need to also correlate the two words assessment with evidence, right? It is much harder to hit a target that you can't see. And our job is to help focus and to remove the blinders from our students, right? How do we do that? Well, we need evidence that is authentic, relevant, valid, that provides valid information about student learning, right? And the chapter goes through a little bit and talks about how we do that. So let's see what it says. The evidence on how to proceed. It should largely be criterion-based, right? So what does that mean? That means, rooted in the subject matter, right? Not to, get off on too many tangents or personal opinions, because that can, raise conflicts and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to jump into that. You guys are all much more experienced than me, so let's keep going. Right? The things that it talks about is based on the, actual comprehension of the subject matter, right? And the steps and next steps that we can take, right, is providing evidence of learning through samples of student work, right? One of my genetics classes that had us do a lot of focusing on writing and analyzing scientific papers did a great job in doing that by always providing an example of that a paper. And Mr. Harvey has been great in showing us our student rubrics, filling out those student rubrics so that our kids can have that clear focus and understand the benchmarks which differentiate how we assess their learning. Right? So there's a lot of really good stuff in that. It even talks about that self and peer assessment. That's the building of the self, the rubric, and then, grading and having the peer assessment. Student learning goals has been a wonderful thing that I've done in my classes at the beginning of the week. We always talk about what we're going to learn that week. I have it written on the board, but it doesn't just sit on the board. I always start the week by talking about it. And when I lecture, I reemphasize what we're going to be talking about. And at the end of the week, I once again focus on that and say, this is what we learned. I think since I have started really focusing on that and not just writing it up on the board, the students have felt a lot more grounded in what I'm talking about. And I feel like I've been able to see that a lot more in their actual progress in my class. And that helps me feel better about myself and how I'm instructing, because I also see the light that it brings to the kids as they feel successful when they get that ribbon and they're not wearing their blinders anymore like we saw with the horse. Other things, observational notes and videos are other great ways. Now, without quality evidence, we are just clucking around, right? It kind of talks about, opinions and just throwing around different ideas, but we need to have collaborative inquiry and focus so that, we can really guide how we're going about that. So how are some of the ways that we can focus? Well, we need to refine, our focus to being specific on what is being learned. We also need to agree upon these things in advance, these benchmarks, these goals, and they need to be visible, right, in front of their faces constantly. This is the race. This is the test. This is the target. And we are the coaches and the motivators to make that happen. Furthermore, we can refocus our conversations by putting them and plugging them back in, right? We can add that into our good things. I mean, I know that's kind of not so much a bait and switch, but to kind of, use things like good things to kind of jump into that to show your excitement for what you're talking about is, I think, a beautiful way to help excite the kids. Almost at the end of good things, I've done that a couple times, and it's really changed the atmosphere in my classroom when I have done that. Furthermore, we want to make sure that these the quality evidence, it has the foundation of analysis where we can actually go through, break it down, and measure these things. And furthermore, they should help springboard these kids into action. By understanding their goals, they can focus on the target and actually achieve those things. And that is pretty amazing. So without further ado, I'll turn the rest of the time over to Trish and Eric. But they asked me to do something really fun. So, now's the time. Get ready. It's countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away, guys.